Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to show you a video on how to turn every single melee into an absolute destroyer of Steel Path. It doesn't matter how good it is, how bad it is. Even your favorite melees, if people told you were not good, become good through this strat. This is infinitely scaling if you are willing to use 2 Emerald Shards, though they are not absolutely mandatory, but strongly recommended. For the purposes of base Steel Path, you could technically skip the Emerald Shards, since I do know that their barrier of entry is a little bit steep. So what's going on today? Well, this is a way to turn every single weapon in the game, every melee, on any frame, into a 100% full strip monstrosity while dealing AoE 20 meters damage in a perfect sphere that goes through walls. Your helmet doesn't even really matter, though I will give a little bit of recommendations here and there for it. So, what exactly is going on? Well, it's very simple. Operator amps can proc melee influence. See that icon right up there? And it just refreshed? That's what it means. And more importantly, remember melee duplicate, that when you get a yellow crit has a chance to, well, deal another hit. Want to know something interesting about melee influence? It does not duplicate your procs. It duplicates the hits that force the proc and also duplicates the procs. So, influence is expired, right? If I go and proc it again like this, notice what happens when I hit the enemy over here. It doesn't just spread the corrosive procs, it also spreads the hits that inflicted the corrosive procs. So, well, melee duplicate, that is an L for you. Imagine a legendary Arcane. That is, by default, part of the mechanics on how melee influence works. So yeah, that's another reason on why melee influence is so strong. And how exactly do you manage to achieve this with your amp? Well, there are 3 key parts. 1, have an amp that can hit enemies easily. So this would be either a beam amp or an amp that hits multiple times. I'm using a Lega Prism, the 6th Prism. It comes from Fortuna, but Clamora also works. There's also the Fad Prism from Cetus. And what you basically do is build that amp. They have decent status chance, but if you pick a brace part that gives extra status, even better, even easier to activate. Otherwise, well, even if you don't make a min-max amp, it only takes me like 2-3 seconds to make sure I have it activated like this. And once you construct that amp, what you will do is you pick up this amp Arcane, which is from Fortuna and Little Duck. You only need a rank 0. Rank 0 at all is good enough. A rank 0 turns part of your amp damage into electric. And, as I showed earlier, amps can activate melee influence. So, all you do is slap that on your amp, because all amps have 1 Arcane slot by default and does not need you to use amp Arcane adapters, yada yada, and then just call it a day. I would recommend bringing Nourish, as you see here, because if I bring Nourish, then it allows me to spread Viral and Corrosive at the same time, so I strip all their armor off, and then also buff my damage against health. And the final result of that is easy peasy lemon squeezy. And against Acolytes, which unfortunately I guess I died there, it works even better, because Acolytes are weak to corrosive damage but are capped to only 4 corrosive stacks, which has a side effect that you cannot full strip them with Emerald Shards when you only use 2, because it will increase their cap from 4 to 8, when you normally need 14 stacks to be able to full strip them. So by modding corrosive and using this technique, you are able to full strip enemies and easily kill them off like this, while still retaining good damage typing against Acolytes that cannot be full stripped, while also being able to spread Viral against enemies that can be flicted out because Acolytes can't. But Trash Fodder will also be tagged with Viral. Now, this particular build is a 10% strength Mirage, which is the reason why you don't really see that much Viral procs coming up. I would recommend running about neutral-ish strength if you're going to run Nourish, and building range like this particular build have grants me extra survivability, because when enemies hit me, they get stunned. So then they're less likely to keep hitting you, which is a perfect solution here, because now your helmet both buffs your damage against flesh, stuns enemies, and also actually buffs your damage itself. Granted, this particular Mirage build is used for a special showcase that you'll see probably over the next few days, so it is not intended for what you're seeing right now. But what I wanted to point out was that notice I'm not even using her clones at all. I'm not using any of the funny features that I've demonstrated in recent times with Mirage builds. I'm just using a standard hack and slash setup with a Nourish build for some range, and that's it. I don't even care if Nautilus does its coordinate or not, because even your Sentinel is not important to this setup. So you are free to use whatever you want there, you're free to use whatever melee you want there, you're free to use whatever Warframe you want there. So let's take a look at what actually comes together in the build to make this tick. The first thing we're going to do is look at our Warframe and my recommendations. As proof of what I said earlier, this is a 10% strength Mirage. But more importantly, as I mentioned at the start of the video, for endurance, you absolutely will want 2 Emerald Archon Shards to increase your corrosive stacks to 14. If you do not have them, that's perfectly fine. For base steel path, this still absolutely destroys, because remember, influence mirrors the hit and the proc, not just the proc. So you already have duplicate built in, and it doesn't even care if it's a yellow crit or not. Even say you're using a red crit build, it would still duplicate that hit as well as the corrosive proc. So let's take a look at our Mirage. Or it doesn't matter, none of this stuff matters. What I would strongly recommend is using Arcane Strike, because the faster you hit, the faster you can spread procs, the faster you can kill enemies, because then they'll be full stripped. Arcane Fury is optional, you don't need this, this is just min-maxing. The enemies don't have armor. When was the last time you had problems killing enemies that don't have armor on Steel Path, right? So, I don't care what you use for your primary and secondary. The only thing I'll say is bring this for extra sprint speed so you can move more easily. Dexterity Arcanes for longer combo duration if you want some extra quality of life. Augur Mons if you for some reason want to play some shield gate strats. But yeah, Focus School, Naramon as always for power spike for even more lenience. But even without Naramon, your combo duration already lasts 20 seconds on this build. So if you want to use something else, then be my guest. For the melee build, every single melee will be built similar to this. The only reason why I have Voltaic Strike here is because I can't fit Shocking Touch. I don't have the polarities for it. So that's up to you if you want to run it, because your status chance is carried by Weeping Wounds. Now, there is a caveat if this weapon has absolutely garbage status chance. I don't know how many of them exist, but say like 5%. Then yeah, it's not going to work as well. But your typical melees these days, any type of thing that people would normally consider their, favorite melee, I would say it has at least 12, 15% status. So with Weeping Wounds, that would push it easily above 50%, which means every other hit as a bare minimum would proc a status. Melee influence reflects this within 20 meters while it's active. And remember, it reflects both the hit and the proc, not just the proc. Because we don't need to build electric at all, since it's coming from our amp on our operator. I can go all in corrosive damage to make sure it's as high weight as possible, so that it is as most likely to proc as possible. And as a reminder, I would recommend only running, say, 100% strength on your Nourish, so that you don't dilute your corrosive procs too much, so that you can still put out 14 corrosive procs as fast as possible for full strip. For the actual build, it's quite simple. 2 slots corrosive, 2 slots crit and status scaling crit damage. Attack speed is strongly recommended, especially if you don't have access to Arcane Strike on your frame. We do not need Condition Overload, because, well, most of the time we're only going to be proccing corrosive. Maybe a couple other things here and there, but you're going to be killing everything around you so quickly, since not only is all the armor ripped off, but you're mirroring the raw hit damage as well. Range is a huge boon to this kind of setup, because range, just like attack speed, allows you to hit more enemies per swing or in a per unit time, meaning faster strip, faster status application, faster DPS, higher KPM. So, well, I mean, that's all you need for the build today. As I mentioned, your Sentinel and the weapon doesn't really matter. For your operator, let's go take a look at that. I was using a Lega Prism, as I mentioned previously. So that is built with Lega and the Traction and Sardis. If you can get a status brace, that's better. But it really doesn't even not matter much, because, well, The things I recommended was either beam prisms or use the fad scaffold, which comes from Cetus talking to Quilonko, which is the bouncing frisbee boomerang one. So that shoots once, you can shoot and forget, go back to your frame, it'll bounce around and proc influence when you're, well, already back in frame. You can see how we have electricity built directly into our damage now, and that's the reason why I said a rank 0 is already enough. As long as you have decent status chance, even if you don't have a status brace, because we're using a beam prism, even Clamora works, or the bouncing boomerang one, then you're going to have no issues proccing the Arcane. As I mentioned before, a rank 0 surge is enough, because you just need electric on your hit in general. So a single copy is enough, and you can grab this from Little Duck in Fortuna. That's it, what we have for this video today. I hope you enjoyed it all. A like and subscribe always goes a long way to help us out. I'll still be uploading more videos in the near future, even leading up through and onwards from the Gauss Prime update, covering more regular crazy builds. As a reminder, this works on any melee and any frame. Will this survive into the Gauss patch? Well, as I said when I started this video, yes, I think it will. There's a reason why I waited until today to show this. But that'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.